MyAgLife is brought to you by ICL Growing Solutions, a leading global fertilizer manufacturer and exclusive miner of polyhalite, marketed as Polysulfate. Learn more about ICL's cutting-edge crop nutrition solutions at icl-growingsolutions.us. We know it's been tough managing inputs and resources lately. That's why we're inviting you to the Inputs Ag Summit on January 10th in Fresno, California. This event is a lifeline for specialty crop growers, PCAs, CCAs, and applicators alike. It's your opportunity to get help in today's challenging landscape. What will you find at the Inputs Ag Summit? Cost-saving seminars, exhibitors eager to help, networking with experts, special panel discussions, and solutions for hard times. Visit myaglife.com/events today to sign up for this new and exciting conference. That's myaglife.com/events.
As a disclaimer, views expressed in interviews are solely those of the individuals and do not necessarily represent those of MyAgLife, JCS Marketing, and its employees.
Welcome to MyAgLife, where we cover your world in agriculture. This podcast is powered by the top publications in the industry: West Coast Nut, Progressive Crop Consultant, and Organic Farmer Magazine. Here is your host, Taylor Chalstrom.
All right. Hi, welcome to MyAgLife. Today we're talking with Christi Falen, agronomist at ICL, about nutrition-related challenges with growing more high-quality almonds and the role of macro and micronutrients in a balanced program. Christi, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here today, Christi. So, Christi, an almond orchard, it must be well managed to produce the best crop, of course, for today and for the future, as these trees live for multiple decades. And with this comes, of course, an array of challenges, including that of maintaining a balanced nutrition program for the trees, things like pH management, nutrient efficiency, timing of nutrition, even with the plant's growth stages, etc. Christi, could you briefly maybe go over some of these and why they matter to the grower in the context of a balanced program here?
Yeah, so, we look at all of our nutrients are required. We have all of our macronutrients, secondary nutrients, and micronutrients, of course. But there are some that really come out as key things that we have to really watch in our almond production. And a couple of those on the macronutrient side would be the nitrogen and the phosphorus. We know that the nitrogen has to be managed well, and a lot that's required based on our yield potential. And we're not going to delve into a huge amount of the nitrogen today, but we definitely would want to go a little bit more into the potassium and what's required. Our potassium is going to range as far as the amount required in the pounds per acre per year, anywhere from 200 to 360 typically for a 2,500 to a 4,500 pound yield that we're getting off of those almonds. So we definitely need to make sure that we're really watching that. We have to make sure that we're watching our calcium, our magnesium, our sulfur, and our zinc and our boron are super important as far as micronutrients, as well as some of the other ones that we don't always think about, like our molybdenum, our cobalt. Those and nickel are also important ones that we need to consider in a balanced approach, because if we don't balance it out, then we have Liebig's law of the minimum that we've known for a long time. If we have one that's out of balance, then it's going to impact all of the other nutrients. So keeping them in balance is important.
Kind of speaking on potassium, it seems like it's one of the main one of the macros that a grower could be thinking about around this time of the year. Obviously in the dormant stage of the tree, there's not a lot of nutrient movement or uptake in general, but potassium is a little different in that regard. Can you kind of just explain a little more why potassium is so important to the almond tree, even in this stage of the tree?
Yeah, so we really need to make sure that we're setting the tree up for the next year when we're looking at post-harvest applications that are done, and making sure that it's there, it's in the soil, the tree is able to take it up, and it's available to it as it's first getting going. It's not going to have the huge demand first thing in the spring, but then it really needs it to be able to set it up for the rest of the year and into that rapid growth. So if we make sure after harvest that we have adequate potassium that is in the tree, then it allows it to be able to be healthy going into the next year and have the plant vigor that it needs, the disease resistance, when it's sitting there and ready to go for the sugar and starch accumulation going into the next year. It's super important for a lot of enzyme activation, water balance, photosynthesis. And if we don't have enough potassium, then we're going to have, different malfunctions in these processes and a reduction in our yield and our quality. And we have to make sure we have enough potassium for next year where we're going to be ready to go for that bud differentiation.
Obviously, a foliar application during this time of the year is out of the picture. No leaves on the trees. So is this kind of going to be a banding situation that you're going to be seeing in the dormant season for potassium for any growers that do choose to apply that macro?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. You think about it, what can we do now? One of the things that we can do now is we can do a banded application along the tree line of a product like our standard polysulfate. And then as we put it along the tree line and it's banded, then the natural moisture that we'll get during the winter will actually help to incorporate it into the soil. And it is a product that slowly breaks down and is a prolonged release. So it will give it to the tree as it has that moisture and it's incorporated into the soil. So kind of in a way, a sustained release, a natural sustained release that comes from a product like that. So it's a good option to put on for this time of year to get the potassium up into the tree now through springtime and into next year as it's meeting those potassium demands.
Definitely, and I want to get into a little more about the polysulfate product right after a word from our sponsors here, Christy.
Growth is at the heart of everything we stand for. And at ICL, we don't just talk about what might be possible in the future, we actively work with you to create it every day. Our full range of plant nutrition products, including controlled release, water-soluble, liquid, and specialty granular fertilizers, may help you grow more with less. Learn more at ICL-Growing Solutions.us. We're thrilled to announce the North Valley Nut Conference taking place on January 31st at the Silver Dollar Fairgrounds in Chico, California. Held in conjunction with UC Cooperative Extension, this is a golden opportunity for professionals in the tree nut industry. Network with our exhibitors and sponsors who are committed to success in your orchards. Earn valuable continuing education units and expand your knowledge on latest industry trends. Listen to expert speakers share valuable insights and practical advice. Attendance is filling up fast, so visit myaglife.com/events and register today. That's myaglife.com/events.
All right, hi, we're back talking with Christi Falen, agronomist at ICL, about nutrition-related challenges with growing more high-quality almonds and the role of macro and micronutrients in a balanced program. So, Christi, you're kind of introducing a product like polysulfates, which could be classified as like a secondary macronutrient. These are also known, I understand, as polyhalites, and are important. Can you kind of delve into a little more about what role these types of products, these secondary macros, sort of play in almond production?
Yeah, so the polysulfate has an advantage of having potassium in it, as well as sulfur and calcium and magnesium. So when we combine all four of those nutrients together, then, and they're all in a sustained release, a sulfur form, a sulfate form, Then we have the benefit, like we've talked before, on the potassium that's moving into the tree, but it's doing it in a sustained release pattern. So that's really good. In addition to that, it has sulfur, which we know the sulfur is important for if we don't have adequate sulfur, then we don't have and a good nitrogen to sulfur ratio, then we don't have as good of a nutrient use efficiency on our nitrogen, which is a nutrient that is super important in almonds and is being more limited in California as far as the amount that you can put on. So the sulfur, that is a portion of the polysulfate, is actually helpful in that process, and is critical for us as we're forming the amino acids and the proteins and photosynthesis as well. So that one's important on that side. And then we think about the calcium that is also contained in the polysulfate for cell division, the cell wall strength, and the quality, the fruit quality that's necessary. Think about getting that calcium into the tree and available so that it's got adequate calcium in the spring when it first starts to break dormancy, and then that calcium can be able to redistribute throughout the bud, and as it's flowering, that it's there for the tree and the fruit, so that you can have good bloom and early fruit set, and then better nuts and production at the end of the year. And the magnesium is a critical portion for when we look at chlorophyll production. So then that corresponds with leaf growth and ultimate yield, and making sure that we can help to minimize the nut drop that comes from that.
Of course, when it comes to balanced fertility management, we can't forget about how important the micronutrients are to this whole process, this program as well. So what role do those play in quality and yield?
So zinc and boron are definitely important nutrients that have to be there during the flowering stages. And so making sure that they're adequate, and a portion of it, that's part of why, like a product, like we have an AgroNutrient pH low that has 11, 45, 11 as far as your NP and K, but it has a 2% zinc. And so we will make sure that we are putting that in so that we get it in the buds like we would have with the calcium. It's necessary. The boron is necessary for flowering and fruiting, but not in excess. Additional micronutrients that are important that we don't always think about is molybdenum. We think about molybdenum and its importance in being a key component of the nitrate reductase and the nitrogenase enzyme. So it's important for nitrogen use efficiency, and for flower formation and fruit set and chlorophyll in the leaves. So the molybdenum content is important, and a product like we have with the Nova Elevate provides that, the molybdenum, as well as the cobalt. And the cobalt helps us with making sure that we are regulating the oxygen levels and not getting excess ethylene production, so that we're not getting early senescence. Also, another micronutrient that we don't always think about would be nickel. And nickel is a component of the enzyme urease. So again, all of the thinking about the nitrogen use efficiency, some of these micronutrients are important that they are in the system so that the nitrogen can be more efficient. And overall, what we're after is increasing our nutrient use efficiency, making sure that we're applying only the nutrients that we need in the quantities that we need as much as possible, and increasing the nutrient use efficiency of any of the products that we're putting on and that are going up into the almond trees.
And Christy, that's one thing I kind of want to hit on here on the side. Of course, some growers would be worried about, with maintaining kind of a good nutrition program, there's a cost of course, and in recent years, of course, fertilizer prices were high. They've come down, but still high for some. How would you recommend the grower being able to know exactly what needs to go in their orchard? Is that going to come in the form of a soil test in some other avenue? What do you recommend here?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different tools that are available now. Our standard that we've done in the past is, you start with the soil test to get an idea what the baseline is of your soil, understand that. And then we would do the tissue analysis, and there's sufficiency levels or percentages that we need to be able to get to at certain times of the year. So those provide a baseline, but there's new technologies that are being done now where you can start to monitor what the moisture content is and the nutrient content of your tree in real time, as like researchers are testing these, trying to understand how they can be utilized effectively. Those could be an option if you're thinking about putting in a new orchard, considering doing zones where if you have variability in your fields that you could put out different fertigation levels based on what the requirements are and if there's variability within the soils. Other things that you could do to increase your nutrient use efficiency and not have to spend as much would be watching your pH of your soil as well as the pH of your water. If the pH of your soil and your water is too high, then you're going to decrease your nutrient use efficiency and what they can take up and what's fixed, as well as, within your emitters and your drip tape, you could have precipitates that would be forming. So then you could consider acid forming or acid fertilizers like our Novapec acid at a 1% solution is actually a pH of 2.2, but we can utilize it at different concentrations to buffer the pH and do it through fertigation so that we can be able to increase the nutrient use efficiency and the uptake within the orchard. So those are all tools that could be utilized depending on what's available, to a grower. And so just kind of thinking about the different pieces that they could utilize.
Definitely. Thanks, Christi, for hitting on that. I think that's important to note in this context when we're thinking about the cost of applying some of these nutrients. Christi, anything else you'd like to recommend to any almond growers listening with bloom around the corner?
Yeah, so I guess just to reemphasize that, set the baseline with polysulfate, with it having the potassium, the calcium, the sulfur, and the magnesium, can put it on and let moisture naturally work it in. And then just think about the things that we can do for overall helping to increase that nutrient use efficiency and making sure that we set the bloom for next year. So even though we want to save and help out on the saving, we have to make sure that we're still setting the fruit and we're making sure that the trees are healthy for the long game and we have a balanced nutrition when we're thinking about not just this year, but out into the future.
Christi, thanks for coming on the show today and talking about some of the nutrition-related challenges that almond growers often face in the state when it comes to growing a better high quality crop, as well as the role of macro and micronutrients in a balanced program. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Fantastic. This is Taylor Chalstrom for MyAgLife.
Thank you for listening. Subscribe for updates, exclusive content, and more at myaglife.com.